Hello, my name is Darren Thomas and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to take a look at different types of reading that can be used for the classroom. So, in particular, we're going to be looking at extensive reading as well as intensive reading. And we're going to define it, how, and where to use these two types of reading. So let's take a closer look at extensive reading. Extensive reading is reading broadly, lots of different books, and the purpose is to enjoy the reading, because when you have your students do extensive reading, it improves their recognition of words and it helps to build their overall general ability to read. So you're not so much looking at specific skills as in you just want them to have repetitions in terms of the reading experience. Now, how do we do extensive reading? Well, the first thing is that the student needs to choose the book. However, the book needs to be at the reading level of the student. So you don't want a student to pick a book that is beyond their ability, because your goal with extensive reading is primarily comprehension. Also, your job as a teacher is to provide motivation and encouragement for the student to complete the actual reading of the book. And one way you can do this is by having the students share their opinion about the book. So, for example, the students get in groups and share what they think about the book, or perhaps they write a response to you on paper as a teacher, whatever. The point is not so much to have them summarize the book as much as it is to share what they think about the book, because the formation of an opinion requires beforehand some sort of a summarizing process to go on with inside the student's mind in many ways. Now, when do we use extensive reading? Well, there are two choices, outside of class or inside of class. Now, if you have the students read broadly or do extensive reading outside the class, it requires self-regulation, or in other words, some sort of a sense of self-control. Very difficult to regulate that without some sort of an assignment or some sort of a guide to walk them through the experience of reading without you monitoring them firsthand. Now, if you use extensive reading inside the classroom, often it is commonly used after some sort of an exciting activity. And so again, you've probably heard of the term silent reading if you are a teacher. So often a teacher will have some sort of a calm down period after a lot of fun, like coming in from recess, if you will, where the students read silently to kind of help them get back into an academic mode. And so like I said, you already are probably familiar with these terms, extensive and intensive, but we're just trying to attach a term to them. So silent reading is often what we call extensive reading. Now, moving on to intensive reading. Intensive reading is serious and focused reading for the purpose of achieving a specific goal. For example, if you have your students, for example, read chapter 5 in the history textbook and answer the comprehension question at the end, that would be an example of intensive reading. The students have a very clear-cut goal. Read the chapter to answer the questions. It's focused. They know exactly what they need to do. They're not trying to form some sort of an opinion. They're trying to get a specific task done. Now, how do we do this? Well, there are several things you have to set up beforehand so that the student can have success. Students need to know why they are reading. So one way you can do that is to, again, rely on the questions in the book. So often, if you want kids to read intensively a chapter, don't have them read the chapter, then look at the questions, because they'll be reading, but they will not know why. Have them read the questions first and then read the chapter, because as they read the chapter, now they know what they're looking for, the answers to the questions. Also, students need to provide some sort of feedback about what they learned. So this could be in discussion or presentation, however it is, or even through answering questions, as we've just mentioned. Students need to have a chance to, after they take in the information, to share the information. Also, when students are sharing what they learned through the reading, they need to refer to the text. This is particularly true for older students who kind of know how to play the game and can fool you that they read something through their experience, when in reality they haven't read it at all. But if they have to refer to the text, that's how you know as the teacher whether or not they actually read it. So if they have a very reasonable opinion, you can ask them to confirm that by what they read, and that's how you can catch them off guard to see if they actually understand what was going on. And lastly, your job as a teacher also to support this in the how is to make sure that you support them with any vocabulary. This is particularly true for the ESL students you may encounter who don't have that strong grasp of whatever language, most likely English, that is being used in the classroom. Now, extensive reading is almost done exclusively inside the classroom. Yes, it can be done for homework, but because it's intense, because it's focused and there's very specific goals, the teacher often is required to monitor that. Now, if the students are older, it may not matter as much, but particularly for younger students, intensive reading is primarily done in the classroom. So, that completes our discussion on extensive and intensive reading. And so we learned that extensive reading is, for broad, for fun. The students need to have some way to share what they learned from that, and to develop an opinion. While intensive is often done focused in the classroom with specific goals, with the student providing some sort of a feedback about what they learned. Our job as a teacher is to provide the context in which the students know what is expected of them in terms of whether sharing their opinion about the text and or whatever type of feedback you expect from them in the discussion. So, my name is Darren Thomas. This was our talk on types of reading. I'm the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Thank you for listening. Hello, my name is Darren Thomas, and I am the Director of Educational Research Techniques. In this video, we're going to talk about different levels of reading comprehension and how this can affect you as a teacher at whatever level you are teaching at. So, let's begin. So, in reading comprehension, there are 3 levels at which the typical student goes through as they achieve mastery in reading and understanding what they read, obviously. And those stages are decoding, critical literacy, and dynamic literacy. These are the 3 levels that a student goes through as they comprehend text. And of course, I'm assuming reading comprehension means the ability to understand what you read. So let's start with decoding. Decoding typically takes place with early grades. Normally kindergarten till about 4th grade is when students are learning to read. And after that, from 4th grade on up, or 5th grade on, students are reading to learn. That's how it works for a native speaker. For the ESL, decoding normally takes place at the beginner to maybe high intermediate level. Those are the 2 streams that we're looking at there. Now, with decoding, for those of you who have always taught higher grades, decoding is typically where you are learning to sound out the words, with the phonics. So, for example, right here, we have the cat is fat. So, obviously, a child who's in 1st or 2nd grade might say the is fat. That is decoding. And so students practice this and practice this and practice this and practice this. The goal right now is not so much to understand as just to be able to read it. That is the primary focus when you are doing decoding. Now, as a child matures and becomes older and moves into the higher grades, 5th grade and beyond, you start to get into what we call critical literacy. This is where you begin to apply some of the higher levels of Bloom's taxonomy, if you're familiar with that, analyzing, comparing, contrasting, synthesizing, and or evaluating to the reading experience. And what is happening here is, if you look at the second bullet here, the student is engaged in a dialogue with the text. They are wrestling with the text. They are struggling with the text, like the picture right here. They're fighting to understand. In other words, they already know how to read, and now they're reading to learn. And so some of the ways that we can pull students into the levels of critical literacy is through having discussions in the classroom and or including writing assignments. Now, commonly, and of course, we don't want to speak for the entire world in every single context, but generally, the ability to apply critical literacy skills and to reach this particular level of reading comprehension does not begin until high school at the earliest. Some people often never achieve this for whatever reasons. And again, if you look at the works of Piaget and mental development, you'll understand why on a deeper level. Now, the final level is what we call dynamic literacy. And this is where they're connecting the content to other content they've read or experienced. So, for example, students might read several different authors on one subject. So they might read about justice, and different authors share their perspectives and their views on justice. And the students compare and contrast and evaluate, and they connect. And they find out what this author says, how it's in common with that author, etc., etc. This is much deeper than just reading one book on justice. and just trying to wrestle with what that one author said about the subject. Another way that you can encourage dynamic literacy is by focusing on one idea across several subjects. So going back to justice, the ideal of justice. So you can have justice in history, justice in sociology, justice in business. And again, you're taking the one ideal and you're seeing how it appears in these different disciplines. Again, this is a much higher level of comprehension and being able to maneuver text, not just one text, but several texts and books. Another example of this might be the traditional review of literature in a research paper. So again, you have one basic concept, whatever your problem is in the research, and you're trying to find out what other people have said, and you're trying to say, pull together what they have in common, pull how they're different, etc. That is dynamic literacy at its core. Unfortunately, it is very rare for the average person to ever achieve this. Perhaps the earliest is maybe grad school, but again, we don't want to make sweeping generalizations. The problem is that many people are satisfied with the first thing they find on Google, and that's the end of it. But dynamic literacy requires the exploration of not just the topic, but several other topics related to the topic. And so in your classroom, and I'm often working with university lecturers who come with the assumption that students can read dynamically. And what you have to often do is you have to try to show them how what you are teaching connects with the other classes that they take in their learning experience at the university level. That is one way to encourage dynamic literacy, to see the flow and the big picture of what is happening in their discipline at their major. So in this particular video, we've taken a look at reading comprehension, which is obviously the ability to understand the text or the things that you are reading. And there are the three levels of that: decoding, sounding things out; critical literacy, kind of wrestling with the text, trying to understand the text; and dynamic literacy, going beyond the one text you're reading and pulling in and connecting with other texts and content that you've been exposed to. So I want to thank you for watching this video, and my name is Darren Thomas, and I'm the Director of Educational Research Techniques. Take care.